The world is a global village.
And that's because information travels beyond boundaries.
And on This Morning on ITV,
we guarantee unbiased analysis on topical issues
that will educate you,
entertain you.
So join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Every Sunday to Thursday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on your ultimate news and current affairs program on television. This Morning on ITV, TMR. Join us.
All right, thank you so much. The very last lap of the show now, This Morning on ITV. I did tell you the man, Alhaji Abdulrasheed, Maina, is at large. And that's some of the reports, some of the stories that we have read concerning Alhaji Rashid Maina. Now, perhaps you may want to know, who is this guy? Now, we're told that previously, or for quite some time, in 2-3 years back now, he was the chairman committee on the presidential committee on pension reforms, and of course, somehow he was accused of corruption up to the tune of about 2 billion naira. And very recently, we understand that the guy came back in the country, and he was given appointments with the Ministry of Interior as a director in that ministry. Now, it has to take the efforts of Professor Issa Sage, who is definitely the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Anti-Corruption, to notify that this man is presently in the country. And of course, not just that he's in the country, of course, he's a director with the Ministry of Interior. Now, investigation went on, and of course, it almost resulted to a matter of blame game, right from the Honorable Minister of Interior down to even the head of service of the Federation, and to the extent that the President, about 2 days ago now, had to give a directive that Alhaji Abdulrasheed Maina should be sacked. But as we speak now, we understand that the National Assembly has set up a committee. It was in our news yesterday, a committee to investigate the true nature of his reinstatement into the Ministry of Interior. Now, as we speak now, it is reported that he's nowhere to be found. But again, there are allegations, and of course, reports that he was spotted recently in Abuja with some armed DSS men. That's the state security men. So for somebody to even be going around town with armed security men, now the very big question is that, is this man really at large? Perhaps these are some of the things we are going to talk about now on the program this morning on ITV. And of course, we are privileged to have Pastor Logat Sado, who is a lecturer with the Department of Sociology and Anthropology here in Uniben. And we're also expecting Mr. Atu Osagbovu, and also Ken Irunse to also join us on this segment. Well, the next 23 minutes or thereabouts is going to be quite entertaining and also very, very interesting. Now, Pastor Logat Sado, I really don't know the best word to use to describe Alhaji Abdulrasheed Maina now. But for me, I think he's a fugitive. Looking at the whole developments, the whole story surrounding this man, how best can you describe him as it is now?
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans, and good morning, my great people of Edo State. One word to describe Maina, or perhaps a term, is a typical Nigerian.
But not all Nigerians.
Yes. Unfortunately,
like
yes. Unfortunately, we have been ridiculed, such that the international community will see a Maina as a typical person who represents the average Nigerian. Because, I mean, the last time we heard of Maina was in 2013, when he was declared wanted. And of course, we were told, in fact, EFCC placed an alert on him. And we were even told that there were monetary gifts for whoever could spot him and present him to the law enforcement agents and agencies. Now, all of a sudden, Maina shows up. In fact, there are all allegations that they've seen Maina. All of a sudden, the federal government decided to reinstate Maina and give him double promotion. Do you understand? And well, when I heard initially, I thought it was a joke, that someone was going to come up to deny that nothing like that happened. But to hear the Minister of Interior and the head of service of the Federation, you know, accusing and counter-accusing themselves on who should be blamed for reinstating Maina, and that they were not responsible. They just saw that Maina walked back to the office and has assumed the position of a director, or that they saw papers flying in and out, appointing him as director, leaves a lot to be desired. And I think that to describe him as a fugitive won't be wrong, but we will be absorbing ourselves of the blame. I think that this is a national embarrassment, and that is not just Maina, it is a representation of the total system that is called Nigeria today. It is a national embarrassment for which every Nigerian should be sad, and in fact should call for, not just for divine help, but should rally around their representatives to ask for justice. What is happening today in Nigeria shows to us that there's no safety in Nigeria.
All right,
there's no security anywhere.
Rather than look at it as a national embarrassment, why don't we also see the possibility of looking at it from the angle of national gain? Perhaps the fight against corruption is ongoing, and some persons in some quarters has said that the presidency, the present government, is kind of lopsided. But here again, we have Abdulrasheed Maina, even up to the extent that the president has ordered his sacked, and as we speak now, he's being looked for. So it's more or less like a big plus, to the present government, and also a big plus to Nigeria as a country in an attempt to fight corruption.
That would be an irony to say that it's a big plus. For a government that prides itself as a government that fights corruption, and that in the very eyes of the government, in the midst of all the security apparatus, and of course in the midst of all the task force set up to monitor corruption, that someone was reinstated without the knowledge of the government. And that in fact from reports, although from Bush Radio, that this man has been on salary since 2013. Leaves a lot to be desired. I think that this government, without sounding sarcastic, should rather hide its face in shame. On Maina's case, on Maina's case, I am being on Maina's case.
Even on Maina's case, you can't say so.
Now, but allow me.
We cannot say so.
Okay, but let me explain to you what I think.
Yeah.
Now, Maina emerged from nowhere as director. Now, remember, the president does not act alone. There are those who act on behalf of the president, and so they are appointed by him. For instance, the Minister of Interior. He is the representative of the president in that Ministry of Interior, and that under his eyes, and that means under the eyes of Mr. President, a thing like this could occur, and yet it was not disclosed by him, neither was it punished by him. Rather, it took an outsider, Sagi, for this news, for this information to come up. And rather than accept responsibility or tell us the officer in charge that made this error such that he or she should be brought to book, he's rather sharing blame with the head of service of the Federation. And I read a memo from the head of service of the Federation just yesterday night when she reacted to the minister's claim that she had no idea how this man came back into the system. And that the man now said no, that Maina came into the system apparently because before 2013 he was in Ministry of Interior. And so he felt they brought him back because that was where he left ab initio. The point here is not whether Maina should be reinstated or not, but that the allegations against him, the declaration that he was a wanted man, and all the charges against him by the federal government and its agencies are not yet settled. Yet, Maina's name came up as an acting director in the Ministry of Interior. And I think that this government, rather than saying that they have been able to nip corruption in the bud, should begin to ask themselves, where did they get this wrong? How come in their very eyes, within their binoculars, something like this transpired? I should expect by now that the Minister of Interior, in my opinion, should be called to question or be suspended. The head of service of the Federation.
The issue is ongoing.
Now, wait, just a moment. You mentioned something. This government, if you ask me, the way it fights corruption is lopsided. For instance, Maina's case is one of. But let's even talk about the Secretary of the Federation, for which who was suspended, for which the Vice President was appointed as chairman to look into the issue. The report has since been submitted. How come there is no white paper on this matter?
Yeah, but
how come government has not? How long now? This administration, in the next few months, will be talking of elections. will be campaigning for 2019. How long then will it take this government to punish anyone who is found culpable?
Okay, now you said that in as much as we are really trying to see who to lay blame on now, as far as the reinstatement of Maina is concerned. Now, the first person, if we go down the ladder, I think the first person we need to come to first is the head of service.
Yes.
Mrs. Oyo Ita, right?
Yes.
Now, here is something that she placed on paper yesterday. She said that the head of service of the Federation wishes to inform the public that the reinstatement and posting of Alhaji Abdulrasheed Abdullahi Maina never emanated from her office.
From our office, yes.
That is the office of the head of service.
Yes.
And of course, consequently, the purported reinstatement and posting by the office of the head of service to the Federation is totally erroneous and misleading. Oyoita's claim contradicts claim made by the Minister of Interior. Lieutenant General Abdulrahman Dambazao, retired, who had, while absolving himself of the complicity, blamed the office of the head of service. Now, I really don't understand. But do you think that, I don't know, because the head of service of the Federation, it's a minister, a director in Minister of Interior. Now, don't you think that he works under the head of service, also works under the Minister of Interior? Now, for the head of service to say that she is trying to exonerate herself, it's somehow, though you've said something about that.
Mr. Evans, what is playing out today in Nigeria is a reflection of what some persons have been talking about in Nigeria, for which we've not been giving real attention. For instance, the wife of Mr. President, Aisha Buhari, had said the husband was not in control, and that some other people had alleged that a cabal is ruling this government. Now, if somebody is reinstated and the head of service says she wasn't responsible and that she is not aware, and the Minister of Interior also claimed ignorance, let us take them for their words that they are correct. Let's assume that they were not in charge. That means that there are other people who are in charge of our civil service, who are in charge, who take decisions, who act on those decisions, and they become binding. And so the officers in charge are not responsible. They are just bearing the title. They are sitting on the office, and other persons are acting on their behalf. It leaves me with the conclusion that there is a strong cabal ruling from the presidency, because how do you explain a situation? The presidency was quick to say Maina should be sacked or fired.
Yeah, but again, now, you won't have to blame the presidency for that.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a draconian system. If Maina, you can't just announce that Maina should be sacked. There must be a due process. The presidency doesn't have the fiat to fire any civil servant in Nigeria. There must be
who is to initiate that due process now?
Exactly the point. Those who should initiate the due process are backing out, because if you like it or not, this is a time bomb. And when it explodes, for instance, the head of service, the Minister of Interior, in whose ministry Maina worked and still works, if you ask me, should have come up with a memo to the head of service, apparently if he didn't know what to do, to say, look, somebody has shown up, or there is a memo reappointing a person who is a fugitive, who is on the run, as an acting director in my ministry. What is the due process? I'm sure that in the Ministry of Interior Affairs, there is at least a permanent secretary who is a custodian of the laws of the civil service.
Rather than blame the president, Pastor Asadu, let us also look at the role of the Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari, now who somehow were told that he was also mandated by the president to furnish the office of the president the findings of the head of service.
Which he has done, but has not been made public.
Some reports say that Abba Kyari did not do the job that he was given.
Well,
that it has to take the efforts of the president to really make that announcement. I understand that, you know, like what you're trying to say, that the president really does not have the legal backing, because it ought to be the Federal Civil Service Commission that is supposed to make such announcement. But rather than blame the president, I think we also need to look at the position of Abba Kyari.
Abba Kyari is an employee of Mr. President. In fact, the chief of staff to the president is not responsible to the average Nigerian.
All right, we'll take a short pause now. Let's quickly take a short pause, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. for joining us one more time as we wrap up the discussion now, talking about Abdulrasheed, Maina, and the presidency matters arising. Now, we still have Pastor Logat Sado here. Now, time is really not enough for us today, but perhaps we'll have to come back some other time so that we can really see more how we can discuss this issue in details. Now, looking at the whole story, the whole scenario, now, what do you think this portends for the fight against corruption, most especially as it pertains to this administration?
I cannot talk about the fight against corruption without referring to the work of Professor Patrick Igbenogbiah in his inaugural lecture that he titled "The Criminal in All of Us, Whose Oaths Have We Not Taken?" In that inaugural, he showed us that corruption had been instituted in Nigeria, and that when you fight corruption, it fights back. It fights back at you. Now, what is happening today in Nigeria is a reflection of the fact that beyond the institutional framework to fight corruption, there are abstract frameworks that resist every attack against corruption. And that's the outcome of what we are seeing. So I think that the fight against corruption, yes, so far, I think that we can do better, we can improve. That's not to say that we are not fighting corruption, but the way and manner we are fighting corruption should be total. As long as it is not selective on the basis of ethnic group or ethnic basis, on religious basis, or even on gender basis, the fight against corruption will succeed. But once we begin to favor our ethnic group, like if I'm a Northerner, I should protect a Northerner from facing the full wrath of the law when he or she is corrupt, then of course we are only keeping the gunpowder waiting for the day of explosion. Now, I think that the way out of this corruption menace that we are in as a nation is what scriptures, the Bible says in Micah chapter 6 verse 8, that what God expects from us is to do justice, is to show mercy, and then to live humbly or in humility. So these three things are the things that will drive us. Justice. No matter whose us is God, let justice prevail. Then let us ensure that we show mercy on the poor, because we have impoverished the average Nigerian. We've impoverished the workers. We've impoverished the students. Let's show them mercy by giving them what is due them. If budgetary allocation has been given for road construction, let the road be constructed. If schools should be built, let it be built. And then let's be humble. Is it not inhuman for one man to steal 100 billion naira in the name of being a presidential task force chairman of pension? And then you just went into oblivion, and then suddenly you've shown up, and then you are being rewarded with double promotion. I mean, that country cannot and should not ever say that they are fighting corruption.
Anyway, we are going to say that all these are still allegations yet, and they are still subject to investigation. And the beauty of it all is that the president has taken a firm position to see that the issue of Maina be brought to book. As we speak now, Maina is at large, and he's been looked for. AFCC has, the Minister of Interior, has advised that he should submit himself to the AFCC. But I'm going to assure you that as updates develops on this issue, independent radio and television, we're going to make sure that we follow up the story nitty-gritty, so that we keep on giving you the updates, so as to inform you and also to enlighten you. And a very big thank you to Pastor Logat Sado for finding time to come today, and also to you there that sat back and watched the program. A very big thank you.